We help build a better future when we harness the power to develop new ideas. The power to demonstrate what we're made of. To be the role model our community needs. To be recognized for who we are and what we do. The power to have the same opportunities as everyone else. To break ceilings, or to build bridges. To make things happen. To start something new. ¿Y tú? ¿Qué quieres lograr? What would you like the power to do?
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Next, I'd like to introduce our second panelist who joins us today representing our gold sponsor, Coca-Cola. For Coca-Cola, this inspiring leader is responsible for stakeholder partnerships, philanthropy strategy, community marketing and engagement, nonprofit board placement, employee volunteerism, and disaster relief. Please join me in welcoming Vice President, Stakeholder and Community Engagement, Alba Castillo-Balin.
Well, good morning to all of you, and I want to start with a deep thanks to Sid and his entire team. What an amazing conference. We loved being here yesterday, and this morning I'm inspired. So I bring greetings from the Coca-Cola Company. Sid, Alfredo sent his regards. We're very lucky. Our president is Alfredo Rivera from Honduras, and for us, it's such a pride to have someone that is Hispanic leading the way, especially with a focus on women empowerment and women development. Our purpose is to refresh the world and make a difference, and we have a deep commitment to the communities we serve, making sure that we are present, especially in the area of economic empowerment and mobility with a strong focus on women. So I just wanted to say thank you. I'm excited about this morning. And this is a great opportunity for all of us. We are honored to be a sponsor. We are here to meet each other. We are here to learn from each other. And my message to all of us is that when we leave this very powerful conference, we leave supporting each other, helping each other, and going out of our way to lift each other up, because we are the future. And I think we all need to be in our businesses, our companies, whatever we said is our high. Deborah, I love your remarks. And for that, you need a troop. You need your crew. And I think what is so powerful about this agenda and this intimate setting is to create that. So thank you.
Thank you, Alba. Finally, I'd like to introduce our third panelist. In her role at Morgan Stanley, she leads the segment and strategy that focuses on delivering cash management and lending solutions to Morgan Stanley's international clients across multiple channels, including international wealth management, E-Trade, and Morgan Stanley at Work. This next guest is Morgan Stanley's Managing Director, Head of International Banking and Lending, Ileana Musa. Is this working? Yes, let's get started. So thank you all for being here with us today. I'm certain our conversation is going to prompt many questions for discussion. So for the audience, I will say you have cue cards on your table. Please jot your questions down when you have them, and we'll be reviewing the questions via cue card at the end of this discussion. So jumping in, ladies, to all of you, we know that any relocation, especially one for a global assignment, can change the course of one's career. That's why we're here, right? So please, can we just set the table for the group? Tell us why relocation assignments are important. What role do they play in advancing one's career? And we can start with Alba.
Yes, good morning. Great question. And Coke being a global company, international assignments are extremely important because it gives all of us the opportunity to be familiar with other markets. I think for me, the magic of international assignments is that it pushes yourself to get out of your comfort zone, go to a place where you might not know the culture, you might not know the people, but trust yourself that you have the skills, the capability, you know the business, and you are putting yourself out there to learn. But also the magic of these assignments is the contribution that you give to the local market. How the two come together, to me, is magical. And on a personal level, for me, it's expanded my understanding of how our business works outside the US, but also it's shown me that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We have a lot of commonalities. People want to do the right thing, and people are always willing, wherever you go, to welcome you and embrace you. So for me, they have been transformational in my career.
Thank you. Eliana, what about you? I know that this played a large role in your career as well.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Great to be here with all of you. Sid, thank you for the invitation. So the way I think about it is as Latinas and Latinos, we don't spend enough time thinking about what gives us an edge in a corporate workspace and certainly in a global environment. And so I would start by saying there is great value in bringing your culture and your biculturalism to the table in any setting, in any assignment that's accretive to any company in a corporate setting. We don't spend enough time thinking about that. And so as we think about our narrative, our value, and as we negotiate for these roles, which we're going to talk about, it's really important to think through what is your X factor that you're bringing to the table that positions you very, very well for these assignments. That has proven to be a really good strategy for me, and quite frankly, what's given me an edge versus other candidates vying for similar roles. If I think about how this rounds you out as a leader, cross-cultural agility really comes to mind. Mm-hmm. When you have to work with other cultures that are very, very different to your own, it requires that you flex and adapt to new styles, and that makes you a more agile leader. And then the final thing I would say, it makes you a more empathetic leader. Mm-hmm. When you interact with other cultures and other backgrounds and styles of doing business, and you really have an appreciation for the history of many of these places where you're doing business, it makes you more vulnerable and helps you understand that there's many different perspectives, many different points of views, and being an empathetic leader, it is a requirement as we think ahead, especially in a post-COVID world.
Absolutely. You know, the idea of cultural competency and adaptability as the pathway to empathy, I think, is really important. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Gloria, what about you when you think about the particular assets that Latinas have? We heard we do need to talk more about what makes us competitive. We do need to talk more about the edge that we bring to the game, right? But what would you say are some specifics that we offer?
That's a great question, and I will tell you, what assets don't we have? But I'll go into be more specific, because I think we all that. And you said it perfectly, adaptability. But more importantly, I thought about this long and hard. We're actually innovators. We're actually forward thinkers because of our culture and the many challenges we've had and the many adaptabilities we had to face with our corporate America, even in our daily lives. We all bring that to the table. And that is really important because in today's business world, you have to be a forward thinker. You have to be weighing, how do we move it to the next level? How do we take everything we've learned in our culture, not be afraid, have a voice, and bring those new ideas to the table? Break the floors, right? It's okay to wear red lipstick to a corporate meeting. I remember that specifically as a little girl. I love the red lipstick. But it was interesting because it made people listen. But being a forward thinker, using your challenges, your experiences, and creating that in a culture, in a format that really gives companies an opportunity to open up that door globally and nationally and domestically. So those are one things I think is really important, is really to hold your experiences close to your heart and learn from that. I think Deborah said it perfectly. Adaptability is key. Flexibility is key. We're great listeners. We learn from our children, our families, our grandparents. I think in a way we all had the same parents. You know? As I said yesterday, my father said I was always the president of something, and he still goes into a bank and says, my daughter's the president. I'm like, Dad, get it right. But it's inspiring. It's inspiring to me. So that's one of the key things is don't forget, your voice is loud. Love the shoes. Wear your shoes. But all of that adaptability, the ability to listen and be a forward thinker will go very far in the business world and in everyone's lives.
Thank you. You know, Elia, I'm going to take it back to you for a second and think about when you were claiming your voice at the negotiation table, what is the competitive edge that you forgot? What is the space that you think you really you had to focus to bring into the conversation that kind of by default wasn't what you would more comfortably, more comfortably, you would have left it out. But because you knew what you were there to do, you brought it forward. What is something from your personal experience?
You know, being Latino, I find, is in now. We are the new trend, but it wasn't always like that. And I remember when I started in my career in private wealth, I'd moved from Miami to New York, trying to break into a corporate setting. My resume, I had an MBA, but I didn't have experience in private wealth. And I took on a role as an administrative assistant supporting the head of the business. And the reason I got that role was because, number one, I was very honest about where I was, and I shared my vision in terms of what I wanted to do, which I think is really important. We need to create, we always talk about the narrative, we need to create our own narrative as it relates to what we aspire to do. And in every conversation, whether it's a performance conversation, a year-end, whatever it is, I call it, you know, the drip strategy. Even if it's just 2 minutes, what is your vision for your future? And sharing that with your networks and your managers so they understand you have a bigger picture that you're working towards, and you need their advocacy and the support. So I made it a point very early on to talk about that. I didn't talk up enough the fact that all of the traits that we're talking about, including being very inclusive, which I think gives us a huge edge because in a global environment, you need to bring people to the table. And I find Latinos do that very well because we're all about community. The bigger, the better. We like, you know, having 40 people in the room. That doesn't make everybody feel comfortable. This is the way we roll, right? I mean, for us, it's about the nuclear family, the extended family, los vecinos. I mean, it just goes on and on. So in the workplace, it's the same thing. And I didn't realize that early on, but over time, that's the role. I'm a connector. I connect people. I bring the right people to the table, and I can socialize any issue, regardless of how difficult it is, by bringing the right people and having a conversation and embracing the struggle and the debate, which we also need to do because it's not picture perfect. We need to lean in when things aren't going well, and we need to get very comfortable. And I also think we have that grit because we know when the tough gets going that you have to break through, and we work hard. So you want to bring all of that to the table. But early on in my career, and I think for many of us, it wasn't an open. I was very guarded. I wouldn't talk about my background. I wouldn't talk about my history. And then what I learned is there's power in words, and you actually build stronger, deeper, more meaningful connections when you share your story. And so doing that along the way helps you position yourself and create a setting where you can articulate your value, whether it's your ability to adapt or flex or bring in diverse talent. And so it becomes easier to share that story. But as a starting point, creating that opportunity to talk about your vision is so important because we think, I'm in this entry-level role, I'm supporting this individual, but I wanted to make sure that he knew that my goal was to manage and lead a team and learn that private wealth business and eventually take his job, right? Just like that. So we don't need to be apologetic about what we want. And the sooner you do that in your career in a professional setting, the better it is.
I love it. I love that. Telling your story, claiming your space for your message, right? And we'll talk a lot about advocacy, the role of advocacy, particularly sponsors, in just a little bit. I'm going to skip quickly and just talk about in the realm of messaging, Alba. You know, I want to make sure that we acknowledge the traditional barriers, and one of them are we talk about messages that we put out in the world, but we receive a lot of messages as well, right? Some of them direct and some of them indirect, explicit and inexplicit, correct? So what are some of those messages that you received directly or indirectly about your eligibility for these type of assignments? And second to that, what is your message to Latinas today, regardless of what they're hearing from others?
Great question. Anna, to build on what Ileana and Gloria have said, everything that starts within us. What I learned early in my career that the biggest barrier was myself. And the first thing I think we need to do as Latinas is to embrace when we bring to the table. I was 18 years old, I didn't speak English, so my barrier is this accent. And someone asked a question about the accent. So I think for me it was starting first to acknowledge what were my barriers, and Deborah was awesome because you need to do that exercise and then have that inner belief. But the messages that I received, I've been at Coke for 23 years, at the beginning was, okay, kind of, what do you bring to the table? There were those people that were questioning because I was very naive in saying, oh, I want to be the next Roberto Gosuera, but I want to be the Colombian woman. And I will say naive because you need to think with whom and the appropriate time to share your vision. And I had a very ambitious vision, but through the life stages that I moved, you start changing those. But the messages were kind of like setbacks. But along the way, you meet those people that start asking you questions. So help me understand, what is your next? What would you like to do next? And then I think for us is claiming that opportunity. I learned early on that my career, I own my career. And when I sit at those moments, when I get the 2 minutes or the 30 minutes, you need to be prepared with what do you want to do next and how they can help you. And be very clear about the contributions that you bring to the business. So when I got my first opportunity for an international assignment, the first thing was like, this is not an assignment for Alba, it is an assignment for the family. And I think as we think as international assignments, we need to think about our extended family and what does that mean for our family. Because I think one thing about us, we bring so much to the table, we can multitask, we can handle everything, but I believe all of us, I can say it for myself, if the family is not solid, the rest will crumble. So for me, in that assignment, the first question was, what am I going to do with the family? But I also learned that you can create the assignment that you want if you are prepared. So in my first assignment, I was responsible as Director of Revenue Growth Management for Latin America. And I was supposed to move to Mexico to our headquarters. And I was finishing my MBA, so I was like, I cannot do that now. So I set up an arrangement, and I tell you that I had 3 promotions in Latin America. Traveling from Atlanta, I will position 1 week Atlanta, 1 week Rio, 1 week Atlanta, 1 week Argentina. When I came back to the United States, and I say came back because I was working for the Latin America Operating Unit, my going away party in Mexico, literally 70 to 80% of the people thought I was living in Mexico. So I had the ability to influence and shape that assignment because at that time, my family could not move to Latin America. So those kind of, a little bit of the messaging, but also how important it is for us to be prepared and to be very clear of what is important to us, because you might get the greatest promotion, but if you are miserable at home, it's not really worth it.
So I'm glad you mentioned the term create, right? Because this is about rewriting the rules. This is about designing our own experiences. So I'm going to open this to the group quickly. How do we think global assignments are changing in the post-COVID world, where relocation may not be necessary? And whoever would like to jump in.
I like to jump in on that, but I also like to just comment something that Ileana said and Alba said, and it's really sharing your vision. I've heard that since I can remember, and it's really important. I love it when you said making sure you had 2 minutes in your conversations with executives or your corporate or your team to share your vision. So please, Learn your vision. You can change your vision, but share your vision. And when you're taking international assignments or even a domestic assignment, people are watching, and you think you're, oh my God, my family. I can always hear my mother right now. May she rest in peace. Ay, Gloria. I can always remember her saying that. And my dad still walks around 87 saying she's a president, right? I own Bank of America, so I always laugh at that. But the important thing here is what I want to share is people are watching and are being inspired. And it happened to me one day when my oldest son at 26, currently 26, graduated from college and said, hey, Mom, I got a job. I'm thinking, where are you going? You know, next town, you know, Latino por fin, ¿pa dónde tú vas? Is the first thing I said. And he said to me, Tokyo. And I remember as when he was born saying, you know, I want you to see the world. But I never wanted to say it out loud. But it's because of that, he goes, Mom, I watched you breaking barriers. And I said to myself, you know what? I did okay. Yeah. Because the world is small to him, and the amount of people that he meets culturally is inspiring. Inspiring to me when I go visit him and I sit down with his youth and listen how forward-thinking they are, and they share their visions. So I wanted to say that because I think it's so important that we don't forget that, and to be forward thinkers, innovative. So every arroz con pollo that you ate, every plátano that you ate, and every person that you meet is a purpose. So learn from them, because I think it's very, very important that we never, ever let that go. But as an executive at Bank of America, it's my job to develop a culture and develop my team and everybody that I meet to allow them to share their vision. We have to allow each other to share their vision, no matter how crazy it might sound, or no matter what we might not understand, but as Latinas and as women and Latinos that are in this room today, that's our purpose. And every time we do that, you know, another person moves ahead. I just don't want you to forget that, because that's what wakes me up in the morning. That's what wakes me up, besides a good pair of shoes. But that is something that inspires me every day.
So the clock is really ticking, and I want to get to 2 more questions, and so I'm just going to do a little rapid fire. So Gloria, quickly, the role of sponsors and advocacy of others, and then I'm going to move directly to Ileana and talk about negotiation.
Learn your sponsors. Learn from them. Be a sponsor. Be a supporter. It's just as important as breathing air, right? That oxygen is your sponsors, and it's your teammates, it's your associates. So again, that is critical. If you don't have one, find one.
Thank you.
Can I add something before you transition to negotiation? I love what Myrna said last night. A lot of my sponsors, I didn't know they were there. So I think our work, they are always watching us, the consistency, the courage, everything that we bring to the table, people are always watching us. And it's magical when you realize you have multiple sponsors that you didn't reach out to, that your job got them to be your biggest fans.
Thank you.
Well, and women are over-mentored and under-sponsored.
Yes.
And Latinas even more. So we need to ground ourselves on the facts as it relates to the role we play in being able to build a strong network that leads to mentorship relationships that evolve into sponsorship. Because sponsorship doesn't happen overnight. You don't knock on somebody's door and say, hey, you want to be a sponsor. You can do that. I would say it's not a good strategy. What you want to do is you want to build the trust, the credibility, and the track record that gets somebody to want to sponsor you, that will have a voice for you and bang at the table when you're not in the room to get you your next assignment. That's where the magic happens. It's the people that are vying for you when you're not present, so that you're given the opportunities. And all of these opportunities are competitive in nature. So how do you build a strong network? For starters, ask yourself, I always say, do a drawing, you know, a dining room table, and ask yourself, who are the 12 people in your network? How different are they to you? They should be very different to you. That's where you get the power in the network, because you're going to naturally migrate to us in this room, right? But naturally, this is your network. So I would say you really need to branch out and say, who are those folks that are different to you, that look different to you, that think very differently to you? That's where the magic happens in terms of a powerful network that can eventually evolve into a sponsorship relationship, which is what we all need, because that's how big jobs happen. It's the network, it's the sponsors that are beating the drum to give individuals an opportunity. So I mean, to me, that's a great takeaway for everyone to go and reflect and ask yourself, what are some tweaks and changes you can make in your network to start to build it up and make it as powerful as possible so that it works for you. So that's point number one, negotiations. I know we're doing a rapid fire here. The conversation around framing the role you want is sharing your vision and committing to your vision. Too often we waver because we try to anticipate what's the future going to hold for us and all of the trade-offs we have to make in terms of the big assignment, the global assignment. I remember when I took my first global assignment, I was debating whether to take it after I had been la gotica de agua, dripping, you know, whenever we go international or branch out globally, my name should be in the hat, and people listened. So 3 years later, we branched out. We acquired a global company in private wealth, and so the opportunity came my way, and they said, we want to offer you the job. And I remember I went home and I called 3 of my friends, and they all said, you can't do it. You're trying to grow a family right now. It's not a good time. And I said, I have to call somebody in my network. This gets back to the point on the network. And I called a gentleman. He's been an amazing, amazing friend over many years. And I said, this is the opportunity. What would you do? And he said, I would take the job tomorrow, immediately. And if in 6 months it doesn't work out for me, I would quit. I said, very interesting perspective. So the next day I went back to work and I took the job. And I stayed in that job for two years. It was life-changing, but then I negotiated the terms that I wanted. I wasn't going to be overseas. I wasn't going to be traveling all the time. And I tell women all the time, the best thing about going for those positions of power is that you create the rules. You then change the game, and you then create a different environment for the women that are coming behind you. So you have to lean in, take the risk. And remember, if you have to make a decision today for something you're going to do for 18 months, it takes the edge off. I think too often we think these decisions are for 10 years, for a decade, for a lifetime. They're not. So take it in strides, lean in. And then the last thing I'll say is, I remember I used to get this question early on in my career, are you mobile? And I would say, yes, for the right opportunity, of course I am. I'm always mobile for the right opportunity. And then I would say when the opportunity came knocking, it has to be the right opportunity. So again, don't anticipate. I call it the what if syndrome. What if this happens? What if, you know, my parents need me at home? What if I have 3 kids at the time? Just at the end of the day, for the right opportunity, would you consider moving? If your family's on board, then yes. The question about work-life integration is the other one that I think is really important in negotiation, which is focus on negotiating what you control. Because too often we talk about negotiating what we don't control. Well, guess what? We control negotiations at home because women still carry 2/3 of the workload, even in the best of circumstances and settings. So negotiate. I negotiate at home all the time. My husband's laugh, but I'm a massive negotiator at home with everything I do, and that was critical when I took on that role because your family, your village, they need to be on board with you. So that's part of the equation in terms of creating the rule set that works for you so you can go out there, do bigger things, and change the landscape for everybody in this room.
Great. So we have time for maybe one half question. So, Brianna.
Yes, I have a question from Janine Jansen, who is the Senior Director of Inclusion and Diversity. She asks, what tips do you have to identify allies in your internal board of directors?
What tips do you have to identify allies within your internal board of directors?
I mean, I can start for that with that one. First is authenticity, and we all need to learn to ask the question. You need to go ahead and ask them, here is what I have, what is my plan? Getting that word of advice, engaging others within your 12-people table and being transparent with them about what you're looking for, what you're going for. I think to me is authenticity, asking the question and being prepared what gets the board of directors become allies and then become the sponsors. So I know it's a fire shot. I'm limiting to 1 minute.
Have a conversation. Have a conversation with them. See how they react. See how they respond to you. If they're open, then you know there's a door, there's an opportunity. So you know what? Again, don't be afraid. I mean, they're people too. I always remember that. They're people too. They get up in the morning. They have coffee with us too. They have a significant other or a spouse. So you know what, remember that. So have a conversation. If you're afraid to have a conversation, then you need to work on that, because they want to hear your vision, and that's how they grow. Remember, it's people like you who keep them in their jobs. Remember that.
Yeah.
So if they don't have people who have a conversation, you won't see them very long. It's really very simple.
Right.
If they're in your board of directors, they need to be your allies. If not, they're not in your board of directors. So to me, those are table stakes. If you're in my network, you have to be an ally. If I'm second guessing whether you're an ally, then you're not in my network. So that should really be the starting point in terms of your assessment.
Wonderful. Well, we are at time, and I want to thank each of you, Gloria, Alba, and Ileana. Thank you so much for your insights. I just wish we had another hour. I truly do.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I want to share a couple of things that really stood out, you know, and I hope this is, you know, there's so many to resonate, but one, I'm going to lead from the top going backwards. If you're afraid of something, I think that's the indication that that's exactly where you should focus. Right? Fear is a great tool. It will guide you, right? The other piece that I heard is that, you know, looking at these opportunities, just like Mirna Soto said last night, if it doesn't work out, you come home, right? You think about it for 6 months, think about it for 18 months. You don't have to think about it for the next 10 years and where my child is going to go to school and where they're going to graduate from high school. No, if it doesn't work out, you can restart. That's a power play, and that is our power, as much as it is anybody else's. I really want to hold that out there. And then, of course, we heard it from the group, your vision. Take the time, have clarity on your vision, and make sure your message is consistent to everyone you talk to, however you determine that opportunity. So thank you so much. For the group, we'll take a brief pause and reconvene at 10:40. Thank you so much, everyone.
What a pleasure.